Hello, everyone. I am Nishant. I am a UX and web designer. Specifically, my job title is web designer. It's a little bit about me. I work at the company Finishes Solutions. We're a business development, construction, and real estate company in Waller, Texas. And I am the sole web designer on the marketing team, so I'm always kept pretty busy. But outside of that, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about video games because that's what I like to do. I'll talk about that a little later. I might have some references in my slides as well, so hope you guys get those references. Hope they don't fly over your head. Anyways, all right. So the first thing I want to talk about is UX versus UI, because that is a pretty common misconception a lot of people get like flustered with. Like, are they the same? Do they overlap? What's the difference? And basically, one of my mentors described it in a very good way, and I always use this kind of analogy. Basically, UX is like arithmetic UX is like mathematics, whereas UI is like arithmetic. And what I mean by that is, in mathematics, you have your like algebraic equations and theorems, like I don't know, like your a squared plus b squared equals c squared and Pythagorean theorem, but you use all of that to solve a bunch of mathematical problems. And then with your arithmetic, you just plug in the numbers and get your raw answer at the end. And that's similar with UX and UI. So UX revolves around a lot of the core principles of design, like color theory, information architecture, and yeah. Okay, yeah. Information architecture, a lot of that kind of stuff. And UI is basically making sure all that is structured and then adding in your buttons and your fonts and your colors and everything just to make it look good. So I hope that analogy came across. And yeah, so here are some examples of UX. On the top right, you can see over there, that's a sitemap. Basically, it shows all the pages within a website and what link to each other. That is a wireframe, which will probably come a little bit later in the design process, where you establish the architecture and the hierarchy of each of your pages just to make sure you have all the content and the things that you want on each page before you go in and make it high fidelity. And then I added a color wheel up there. Color theory would probably come more in the UI process, but I just put it in there because establishing your color identity and branding earlier on in the process is helpful. So most of what I'm going to be talking about today is design thinking in relation to the design process, which a lot of you UX designers or people getting into UX might have already experienced if you guys might have taken some UX or UI classes. So yeah, it's a user-centered approach for problem solving that includes activities like research, prototyping, testing, etc. And yeah, this is not a linear process, and I'll get back to that a little later. One thing I want to emphasize though is with UX and with design, this is all about problem solving. Your main goal isn't necessarily to make something look good or make something stand out or make something nice, flashy, and colorful and all that. It's to solve a problem, and that's what design is all about in the end, whether it's web design or UI design or anything like that. It's not a linear process, because I like this infographic over here because it kind of like makes it seem like things are not linear. You can see the lines are just kind of going all over the place. So you usually will start and empathize and will end with test and will have prototyping near the end, but it can switch up all over the place. Like, you might get to prototyping and then you might realize that your problem statement is all over the place and you're not getting anything done. So you might want to go back to define. Or you might get to the test phase, you might realize you might be getting into some roadblocks here and there, and you might want to go back and interview your users and go back to the empathize phase. So it's a non-linear process, but this is usually how it is like. So yeah. So let's go through each step of the design process, basically a description of your users' wants or needs, and you're addressing that in a clear statement, which will help you throughout the rest of your process. So it's, yeah. Basically, what I like to think of this as is it's like your North Star. It's like your like true goal that you're always looking to throughout your entire design process. So every time you might get like distracted, or you might get led astray, or things might mess around here and there, you always remember this problem statement that you have defined. And so your primary goal with ideation is to come up with many design solutions as possible. Don't settle for your first solution, because the most obvious solution is not always the right one. So basically, this is your brainstorming phase. And some techniques are like how might we statements, rapid sketching and prototyping, and wireframing. Wireframing is something that you might be doing a lot here. User flows, sitemaps. One other thing that I've done in the past, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, it's called like Crazy Eights. It's like a weird brainstorming thing where you're like timed and you have to like draw a lot of sketches for your wireframes and stuff. I don't remember exactly how that goes, but that's another thing that I remember would potentially work here in the ideate phase. So yeah, it's just kind of to like mind dump and get all your ideas out on a piece of paper. It usually helps like sketching it out instead of just jumping into a technical design tool immediately. So that's personally what I think. And this is how I wish I looked when I'm brainstorming, but it's usually way more unorganized and messy. I'm not usually this cool. Anyways, so examples of ideation include site mapping, wireframing, and user flows. These are that's on the top right. That's a very messy user flow that I made for a project, but it really kind of helped me organize my thoughts on where the user is going to go in the process, what roadblocks they might hit. If they get into a detour, where would they potentially want to go based off of what they want to do? So understanding these things is going to help you a lot in your process. These two principles are things I always go back to, Gestalt principles and usability heuristics, specifically usability heuristics. So Gestalt principles, I won't talk about this too much. I can't really see this, but basically, yeah, it's very basic kind of design principles and ideologies like proximity, common region, similarity, like things that are closer to each other should be grouped together and will relate to each other. And similarly, things that look similar will kind of be grouped together and will relate to each other in a certain way. So things like this should be remembered when you're designing like specific components on a screen, or doing a visual hierarchy or a text hierarchy, something like that. And yeah, or even how your website flows from one portion of the website to another. That's what I think that's what Common Fate is mostly about. This is a very cool infographic. You can you can find a lot of these and this specific infographic on Interaction Design Foundation's website about Gestalt principles. But this is a cool infographic about how Gestalt principles is incorporated in every single aspect of this particular landing page. So I thought that. So I picked two here because there's 10 usability heuristics which are coined by usability guru Jakob Nielsen, who is one of the founders of Nielsen Norman Group, if you guys have heard of them. So I picked two personal favorites out of the 10, and those are match between system and the real world and recognition rather than recall. Both of these relate to kind of making your design a little more relatable. So match between system and the real world means that your design should speak the same language, use words and phrases and concepts familiar to the user. And basically that goes with like words, phrases, and even imagery and iconography and symbols and buttons. It should be so that it is sort of relatable to someone who knows about things that relate to what your design is in the real world. And similarly with recognition rather than recall, minimize the user's memory load by making elements, actions, and options visible. And the user should not have to remember information from one part of the interface to another. This is in your site. Go into your design with a well thought out color palette. Color theory might come a little later in the design process, but especially when you are working with a particular brand or a company or a organization, or if you want to evoke a specific feeling through your design, establishing color theory and color identity earlier on in the process is going to save you a lot of time and energy, and it's going to just add a lot of consistency. Remember to use font weight to convey hierarchy. So font weight is something you guys might know. Like if you select a specific font like Gotham or Montserrat, you might see like regular, medium, semi-bold, bold, ultra bold, all that stuff. A lot of that is not just used to make things look bigger, but it's used to convey importance and hierarchy. So if you have a piece of text that's more important that you want to highlight, you might want to bold that a little bit, but maybe not too much. So think about how to use font weight strategically to convey a message within your designs. Create simple wireframes that establish a good structure. So yeah, your wireframe is going to last you throughout your entire process. I mean, you can always go back and change it, and you can always change your information architecture throughout your high fidelity portion of your site. But establishing a good structure of your website early on is very important, and it'll keep you on the right track, just like with your problem statements and all that stuff.